Hello and welcome to another edition of Real Israelis, Real Lives. My guest with us today is Rabbi Dr. Uriel Lubetsky. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We're so happy to have you here today. Could you give us a little bit of an introduction? Where are you from? What is your background? Where did you grow up? And what were your professional responsibilities before moving to Israel?
Sure, that's a lot of questions over there. Okay, so where did I grow up? Well, the first few years of my life, I grew up in Flatbush in Brooklyn. I lived there, lived in the same house for about 20, 30 years. And then started to branch out a little bit. I went to MTA for high school. That's Yeshiva University High School for boys. So I started dorming there, so I was a little bit away from home. And then I went to Yeshiva University. So I was more away from home, living in Washington Heights. My single years, I was on the Upper West Side, where a nice Jewish single is looking for another Jewish single to marry.
Okay.
So I was in Washington Heights. I did get married while I was in Washington Heights. And then we moved to Baltimore. There was a position available over there as a principal, as an administrator. You move around a lot. So I started out at MTA, that's Yeshiva University High School, which was my alma mater. I was there for several years as a Rabbi and an assistant principal. And then we moved to Baltimore for 3 years, where I was principal at Rambam, which was a middle school and a high school. And then we moved to Memphis, where I was principal there of the middle school and high school for 7 years.
Wow.
Moved back to New York to the Five Towns. I was there for 3 years at Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, it's now really in Woodmere, but it moved in my time. And then 4.5 years ago, we moved to Israel. And we never looked back, and we're so happy to be here.
That's an incredible story. So a life of working as a principal and administrator of a school and a variety of different schools. And after moving to quite a few cities, the decision was made to move to Israel. Since moving to Israel, could you describe a little bit of the responsibilities that you currently have in your professional life?
Yeah, sure. So like other people that make Aliyah, we don't usually have one job. We have 2 jobs or 3 jobs, and that's what I'm in. I have 3 different jobs. My main position is working at Sulamot. Sulamot is an organization founded by Rav Rimon and still chaired by Rav Rimon, which does a lot of different things. But in regards to me, I work in the English division, and we write curriculum materials for schools in the diaspora, really English-speaking schools, mainly in the United States, but even in the UK, South Africa, Australia, and any place else that's interested in our materials. So that's one thing.
Sulamot is an enormous organization.
Yes.
And this is just one division, as you mentioned. To
Right. So
get to the
maybe
heart
I'll
of
maybe
what
I'll, I'm sorry.
to get
Maybe
to the
I'll
heart of what I wanted to discuss with you was actually how, in terms of has October the 7th impacted the organization as a whole, and what have been some of the pivots and shifts that you found in terms of this is a division writing curriculum, yes, but how would you describe the ongoings of the organization today?
Right. So I'll focus on parts that I'm not so involved in, because they're really working very hard there. And their focus is originally the focus was right in the beginning of the war was to get equipment into the soldiers, because there was seemingly a little bit of a mess in terms of trying to get the right equipment to the right places. So they brought in a lot of equipment. They were in touch with the Israeli government, Mishrad Bitachon, to make sure that the right materials got in, and to serve as a place that had a lot of donations for equipment. After the equipment issue was resolved, so now the focus of the organization moved to help the people that are really refugees from their homes, whether it's in the north or in the south. Starting a program called Atufim, from the word Otef Aza, the Gaza envelope. And Atufim means to really to give a hug to these people, and it's to help these people find jobs, temporary jobs in the places where they're living right now. And also to continue to build a community, because a lot of these places were in this kibbutz or this moshav or that yishuv, and some of them are split up. So our organization helps them maintain contact with each other, get jobs, help them economically. And certainly donations are very helpful for that. So that's one area that.
This is a really important subject that you're bringing up, and I'm extremely grateful, because something that's lost, especially in the Western media, is the reality of the refugees and the displaced people from inside the land of Israel. This is not a subject that is grabbing the attentions of the external English-speaking news. And I think the people who are watching and listening to this should really be reminded that today, people in the Gaza envelope in the south, as well as communities along the northern border of Lebanon, have simply had to evacuate their homes, leave behind their houses, as you just mentioned, their employment, their jobs, communities, and live in temporary housing. Many people are actually in hotels, paid for by the government.
Yes, many people are in hotels, and organizations like UNRWA should not just be helping the Palestinians, but they should be helping the Israelis that are refugees in their own home.
Right, right. So I certainly think that the focus of the refugees is something which has gone underreported, and unfortunately, it's a terrible plight for people. You know, it might be okay to stay in a hotel for a week; it might be fun, but we're approaching 4 months now,
right,
since the beginning of the war, and this is an extremely difficult situation. What
I know that these families very much appreciate visits. I know that my family has gone to visit some of these hotels, bring them all kinds of knickknacks, I would say, or different things, so that it shows that people are interested in them and care for them and are thinking about them. But it's much appreciated, I think, by these families.
Absolutely. What would you describe, and this could relate to other areas of your either professional life or personal life, what have been some of the other major changes that you have experienced that have taken place since October 7th?
Well, I'll mention a couple from two different positions. Another position that I have is as a martzeh, as an educator in graduate school, and I teach Israelis and Americans. And I just got an email today from one of the Israelis. He writes an email, "I just came out of 95 days of miluim, reserve duty."
Wow.
And he was in a course of mine that was in the fall semester. So it was supposed to start right after October 7th. It's now the beginning of February. So he asks, is there anything that he can do to make up the course? Is there any hakalot, things that I can drop from the course that will help him complete it? But that's a reality in a lot of different places, and it's a reality for me. It really drives the point home. There are people that are away from their homes, away from their families, away from the university, can't take courses because they're sitting on the front lines, and he just got out. So that's one piece of how it affects my job, and thinking about how to be sensitive and at the same time making sure that they complete the materials that are in the course.
This reminds me of a reality of so many people that were in school, graduate school, and specifically medical school, how a significant dispensation was given to students in medical school that they did not have to go into miluim, because the government decided that there's an open-ended end date to this. It's not clear at all how long it will be. Those who are in Miluim will be away from their
Right.
ordinary lives. And if you're in medical school, if you are training to be a doctor, the government decided that it was just absolutely critical. You can't miss a course of medical school. If you
Right.
should skip, I don't know, no offense to anybody that's listening that is a philosophy graduate. I myself studied philosophy, but if you were to skip Descartes or Socrates in philosophy studies, you could live, you could get by, you
Right.
would still be able to call yourself a responsible philosopher. But to skip a semester, a year of medical, that's just an impossibility. And so
Right.
a dispensation was made that the government felt that anybody in medical school should not be going to Miluim as a result of the priority of gaining more doctors into society. But
No,
you
that's
had a
very
second
interesting.
you had a second example you wanted to share.
Yes, as a second example, that's my job in Sulamot is writing curricular materials for schools, English speaking schools. And that is the thought about trying to connect diaspora Jewry to Israeli Jewry,
Mm-hmm.
and doing that through several different things. One of the things that the whole organization, the whole Sulamot organization, tried to do was to learn Mishnah in honor of the Chayalim. So there were 433,000 Chayalim to try to learn 433,000 Mishnayot. And that's really to unify.
433,000 soldiers. That
Yes,
is an
about I think about
astonishing number.
130 that are in the regular army, and then 300 in Miluim.
That is. Thank you for pointing out our attention to that number. I don't know if people are aware. That's an astonishing number. 433,000 soldiers currently fighting. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And what was
So
the project?
so the project was just very simple. Just learn Mishnah in their honor, to make sure that they have the additional umbrella of Torah that is saving them from any harm.
That is incredible. That is
So
incredible.
that was one initiative. But then in terms of my writing curriculum, as we said about connecting the diaspora to Israel, this came up around Tu B'Shvat. We send out every so often before Chagim, we send
The New
out
Year for trees.
right. We send out model lessons so that educators can use those model lessons and teach their students.
Okay.
So this model lesson was related to B'Shvat, and the question came up: how much should we talk about Trumot Masrot, the tithes that we give the priests and the Levites? And you don't take Trumot Masrot in America. So why should we teach it? But we Dafka said, you know what? Let's teach it. Let's develop a lesson that deals with Trumot Masrot, because we want to create more of the connection. We want people to understand more about what's going on in Israel and more about life in Israel. And I think that that's something that maybe has changed about our approach, is that sometimes we always have this question: how much should we put in about Israel? It's an American curriculum, or it's an English curriculum, or it's a South African curriculum. But the thinking now is, no, let's put it in, because we want to create more of those connections between the diaspora and Israeli Jewry.
I think that is a well taken point. My experience has been along the same lines. There is a craving, I would almost say a desperation, for people to feel more connected beyond just watching the news. Unfortunately, the news isn't always optimistic or uplifting, and sometimes it can be tragic. But the news cycle is one way of being connected to Israel. But there's so much more than just the ordinary doom and gloom of sad statistics or tragedies that are happening that we are watching. And people are desperately searching for a positive connection. And on the one hand, people are taking trips, perhaps a short 3-4
Missions.
day trip, a mission out to Israel. But beyond that, I think people are hungry. And it's a very well taken point. where can I find my sense of connection living in the diaspora today with the ordinary man and woman in the street living in the land of
Yes,
Israel? That's
absolutely.
that's a very worthwhile and worthy project. And what's the response been from schools when you've been going in that direction?
I think the response has been very positive. People are interested in some of these materials. You know, they have to see how they can fit it into their curriculum. Sometimes it's not so easy because they have their own curriculum materials. But we try to make connections and try to give out free materials that people can use in their classrooms.
Tremendous. And as we close in your own life, having now been in Israel for over 4 years, these are difficult moments. These are difficult times. Do you question your decision to move to Israel? Has this reinforced your decision to move to Israel? How do your family
Absolutely not.
feel?
Absolutely not. I don't question it at all. I'm very happy to be here. It's uh, it's certainly pretty scary that you have all these deaths in the army and that you're connected to it. My wife points out the Kfar Etzion Cemetery, the cemetery here in Gush Etzion, which started out before this war with one or two soldiers, is maybe at 8, 9, 10 or something like that. It makes a difference. You really feel it. And I guess I'll close with a statement by Rav Aaron Lichtenstein. Do you want to play in the game or do you want to be in the stands and watch the game? Living here, we're playing in the game. We're part of it, and you feel it. Not living here, you're in the stands. You're watching. You don't quite feel it. It's not quite like playing the game. And that's the choice that you have. Play the game, play in the game, or watch it from the stands.
That is a very powerful, I have goosebumps. That's a very powerful last line to close on. And I think so much can be read into that one statement. And I will leave that statement with all of our viewers and listeners who are watching today. Rabbi Dr. Uriel, thank you so much for joining us today with your insights and leaving us with much food for thought. We really appreciate it. Stay safe, stay well, and may we hear better news.
Amen. Sarah Tavot. My pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Bye.